Welcome to Bytes of Code. In this video, we're going to create a script that will automatically move files. This is kind of getting into automation, making our life easier with Python, but I want to use ChatGPT. So let's go ahead and give ChatGPT a prompt and see how far we can get with this prompt and start moving code from ChatGPT into our program. So we gave ChatGPT a prompt. In Python, write a script that will move files automatically from my downloads folder to my Bytes of Code IMG folder. Right off the bat, we see they use import os import shutil. I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but I know that's used to move files. I want to see maybe if we can get it to do this with, I'm trying to get it towards a watchdog. That's the name of the trigger event method. I want it to automatically detect whenever a new file is created in that downloads folder. So it's doing a great job already getting us to move the files, but I again want it to detect. I want this to be running in the background, so every time that there's a new file, then we are able to get that file moved automatically. Okay, so ChatGPT gives us an interesting solution. It tells us basically that it will sleep this loop that will run in the background. I think that this will work, but again, I want to try to get it to automatically detect. I don't actually want this to run every 10 seconds. It seems a bit inefficient. So let's see if we can try to push ChatGPT again to use detection. So we're asking it to use just another detection method to see when there are new files created in the folder. And it is able to figure out to use watchdog. And now it's giving me the ability to use this watchdog. It's going to trigger an event whenever it finds that there is a new file added in that source directory folder. And I think this is really close to what we're wanting. So it's still using the time sleep, but we're going to go ahead and use what it's giving us and see kind of if we can find ways to improve it. We're going to keep ChatGPT up in the background, and we're just going to continue to talk to it if we find problems with this script. So let's go ahead and just copy this code and head over to our IDE. We'll do a new file. We'll do ChatGPT file mover. And we'll paste it here. So I do have a downloads folder. So this will be my downloads folder. If you have the C drive, you can just take off the actual C, the drive letter and the colon, and we could just use the slashes. And I do also have a Bytes of Code folder that I want to use. And this is going to be our two folders or two directories. So we're getting an error. I'm just going to go ahead and send ChatGPT this error because I kind of want to work with it. So perfect. So ChatGPT gives me a great example to use. It's going to be that R. That R is going to help us to tell Python that this is going to be kind of a directory path. So expect the slashes. I think it has something to do with the slashes that actually makes the problem with the Python script is saying that it can't really understand what this path is. So we're going to just use that R. It did give us a second example also that we can do this. It basically is replacing the slashes with an escape slash, but we're just going to use the R because this is going to be the escape sequence for a path. We're going to run this again and see what we get. Okay, so we are able to hit this break. We are able to start. It's still using the sleep. I think that's something we may be able to take out, but let's just go ahead and let it run. So it is running right now. Let's move this picture. Let's just kind of create another copy of it here in this directory. So we'll copy, paste. The event type is modified though. That's what it's classifying it as. It's classifying it as modified. So let's go back to ChatGPT. Let's continue using it. So a lot of misspellings, but ChatGPT understands me, thankfully. I want to try to get ChatGPT to make a new function for onCreated. What it looks like is happening is the event that we're catching is modified, but I want to see if we can get it to do an onCreated. Okay, perfect. It's giving me an alternate method. The first one, it doesn't really work. Basically, it doesn't really work. When the time we get here, the event type is modified. So we actually haven't been hitting this code, but this is what I've been looking for. I've been looking for an onCreated event instead of onModified. So we're going to go ahead and let's just copy this. Let's copy this and go back to our code. We'll stop this. We have onCreated. I think that's the only thing that's changed. Let's go ahead and run this program again. We'll delete some of the testing files. And we'll do one more copy. And we see our bytes of code image folder is empty. Let's paste this in here. We've triggered an event. And I believe that it has moved it over. So ChatGPT has given us a Python script that will automate moving. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to take out the thread sleep, and we're going to keep our exception handler. We're going to take out the observer join, and we're just going to let this loop basically be an infinite loop. We're going to let this loop pass with that keyword. And let's go ahead and run this now. There's no breakpoint, so I'm not having this stop anywhere, and I just want to see this move files. Let's bring up our two folders. So let's use the how to use functions full, and we can see right exactly when I'm pasting it. We can see it being moved over. So let's do this open API picture, our last one, and we can see I pasted in this folder, but it's appeared in this side on my bytes of code image folder. So definitely ChatGPT is created for us a automatic file mover whenever we have a new, and this is triggered whenever we have a new event created, a new file created in our specific directory. Let's go ahead and take this just a step further, because why not? We have ChatGPT here and it's not down. So I told ChatGPT if the file exists already in the bytes of image folder, because it's possible to just basically have this exact same file moved over and it might cause a problem. So I just said add a UUID to the beginning of the file name. This is a unique identifier. It's also known as a GUID, and it's just basically a long ID that is not going to have any chance to be replicated. So it's very safe to use in order to become incredibly unique. So perfect. ChatGPT is doing it right here. This is going to be our actual code that we change here. We will, right before the move, we would check if that exists, and I think ChatGPT might have given me the UUID import UUID at the beginning. We actually don't need time anymore. And perfect. So ChatGPT has given us the ability to have similar file names. Let's go ahead and take a look at what's going to happen. So in this example, let's do the ChatGPT versus programmer image. If we copy this picture and paste it, we see ChatGPT has given us the ability to use a GUID at the beginning of the name, because these file names would be exactly the same because it's a copy. So that's how we see a GUID. If we were to take them both out and delete both of them, copy them, we would get just a copy.png. But if we copy it again, because that file already exists, we're actually getting a GUID underscore and then the file name. And of course the file doesn't exist here in the downloads folder. Let's do it. Let's take it one step further. ChatGPT is absolutely killing it. Let's ask ChatGPT to do this only for files with the extension of, let's see, what files do I have in here? PNG. Perfect. So ChatGPT is giving us that if statement right there, if file extension equals .png, and it's actually opening the file here and reading the file extension. This is what exactly that I wanted. If it's a PNG, then go ahead and trigger this file move or this shootil move. And we're going to stop our program and paste it right in our else. So we have here the path, file name, and the file extension. The file extension is PNG, and I'm going to go ahead and do ChatGPT one more to actually, this is actually what I would like to use in real life. If the file name contains BOC, let's do also if the file name. So I told ChatGPT that I would like to move PNGs, but now I would also like to move with the name BOC if it has it somewhere in the name, because what I would like to do is actually when I download my images, they are titled with BOC underscore, and I want these images whenever I download them to be automatically moved into my BOC IMG folder, so I don't have to continue to see them in my downloads folder, or I don't have to continue to move them manually. And we see here this if condition. This is already the if condition that we added, and it's giving us a little bit extra on this if condition. It's giving us an and statement, and this is absolutely perfect. This is exactly what I was wanting. So let's go back to our code. We'll just change all, I think it was just the else statement. So what I noticed here through some more testing really quickly is the uppercase PNG. I have some uppercase PNG for some reason, so I'm going to just add two lower, or just lower. I'm going to force it to be lowercase on my comparison, and this is going to make sure that even uppercase PNG or like camel case PNG are still able to be moved whenever I save it. Let's go ahead and try out some more files. Let's delete some of these copies. I've been trying this one. This is the one I want to try, and we see here that it's moved over. I've pasted it into this downloads folder, but it was moved over. Let's do a copy on this file. It's test. It's the name of the file is test, so it's not going to be moved over, and that's perfect. But let's try it again on this one. It does have a BOC in the file name, so it should be able to move over, and it does. Whenever I paste it, it moves over. Let's do one more. This is going to copy and paste into the downloads folder, and it moves over. It detects that it already has the exact same file name, so it adds an ID at the beginning of the file name. And now we have a file mover, especially for me whenever I download a file that's in the downloads folder. If it's a PNG and has the BOC in the file name, it can move automatically to another file location. I hope this video was extremely helpful to you. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want explanation on every single line of this code, please continue watching because we will take a look at every single line and explain what is happening. So at line number 1, we import OS. Import OS is going to be used for the reading of the file, and especially or specifically the path. We could use an import OS to do a rename. It's os.rename. I've used that before and it's worked, but in this case ChatGPT told us to import shuttle. Again, if I'm saying that incorrectly, please drop a comment to let me know how I should be saying it. And this is going to be used for actually moving of the file. You can see we only use this once. This is for file moving, source file and destination file, and we'll get to that one. Import UUID. This is something that already comes with Python. You don't have to do any pip installs in order to get this module. A UUID is going to be a unique identifier. Universally unique identifier, or GUID is GUID, global unique identifier, something like that. And this is just going to make sure that we're going to create this ID if we see that there's a file that already exists. So the purpose of this ID is just because there are never two UUIDs that exist that are the same. That's basically, it's like one in every couple billion you'll come across a match. But so it's very safe to use this when you want to be truly unique in your IDs. The next line, line number 4, is watchdog. Watchdog is fun. Watchdog is what we're going to be using in order to find our event. So if we didn't have watchdog, we wouldn't have anything giving us a trigger for an event. And in this case, watchdog is going to be used in order to observe this file, or this folder directory, I should say. We have an observe, and we also have a file system event handler. So these are both used again from watchdog. This is probably what you will need to install. Pip install watchdog. Line number 7 is going to be our source directory. This is going to be where the files are going to be that we want to copy from. Line number 8 is going to be our destination directory. This is going to be where we want the files to be copied to. We have slashes. You don't have to put the C drive. Actually, I don't think you're supposed to put the C drive or the drive letter and a colon, but you do want to use this R. R is going to tell Python that this is going to be slashes okay. The slashes are okay and safe because this is a path string. So if we didn't have the slashes, we did see earlier in the video, we would be getting some errors. But because we have this R here, this is escaping the slashes because it's a path or file directory that Python knows about. That's the same for line number 8. Line number 10 is a class. So this is going to be a class, new file handler. We can name this whatever we want. Let's do this right here. We can name this whatever we want. We just want to make sure that later we use the same name. So this is a class, and it's going to take in a parameter of the file system event handler. And this is something that basically is handled at this point from Watchdog. We just tell it to give it the file system event handler, and it already knows what to do with it. We don't have to worry about handling actually any of the events. If it's uncreated, if something's renamed, if something's modified, if something's deleted, we don't have to worry about that. We just need to make sure to put a function here, this is line number 11, of whatever we want to do on the event. In this case, we have an onCreated event. Earlier, we did have ChatGPT give us a onModified. I think that was his first thing that it gave us, onModified. And I don't think that this was going to work with the created. It kind of gave a way to work with the created event, but it's triggering onModified. So we don't want an onModified event, but this is something that you can add if you're interested in seeing if a file has changed. There's also an onDeleted, I believe. But in this case, we only want a function based on created. And this is not a function that we put like ourselves. We type, this is my function. This is a very specific function that we need to make sure to use based on Watchdog. So we want to always be using this onCreated function. We pass it two parameters, self and event. Self is basically going to be the class object, and it's not something that we have to worry about, but event is going to be very helpful for us. In this case, we check if the event is a directory. I don't think this was needed, but I think this is a good kind of fail-safe to make sure everything's all right. Because if a new directory was created, then we don't want to be doing anything, and this is just going to return. But if it's not a directory, we're going to go ahead and know that it's a file, and we're going to proceed with our file handler. So in our file handler, line 16, we have a source file. This is going to be the event object. It has a parameter called source path, and this is going to be basically where that file is. Line number 17 is going to be the file name and file extension. That's kind of like an interesting way of looking at it. If you haven't really seen Python before, usually we would have the variable name equals, but this is a variable name, comma, another variable name equals. And because the reason of this is because this function, OS split text, is actually going to be returning a list of string. And so that's kind of why we want to be able to have two variables for the output to be set to each of these variables. These variables will be the file name and the file extension. This split text function does take a parameter. It takes a file path. So we give the file path of the source file, but we're kind of also calling another function here of base name, and this is going to take just the name of the file. So we usually, what would be here, it would be something like users hjosh download slash boc image.png. We don't want the whole path, we just want the boc image.png. That's what this is giving us, the base name. It's making sure just to give us that file name. With that file name, we're splitting it into a file name and a file extension. In line 18, we have destination file. This is going to be where we would like to put the file into. It's nice to do ospath.join. This is a very safe way of combining paths or creating paths from multiple folders or files. And what this is doing is it takes the destination directory where we would like to save the file, and then it's also taking what we would like to name the file, and it's joining it together into one string called destination file. That's a variable name. So this destination file would actually equal something like misc folder / boc image folder / boc image.png. That's what this variable would equal to. Line 18, we have our if condition to check to see if the file extension equals PNG, because I only want to move files if they're PNG. More specifically, I'm actually taking the file extension and I'm forcing it to be in lowercase, because you could have an uppercase P, a lowercase n, uppercase G, and that would completely mess up the system. So I'm forcing everything to be lowercase and then checking it against a hard-coded lowercase string.png. If that file is a PNG, we enter into line 20, where we also do an if condition. We check to see if boc is in the file name. And this also is case sensitive, but in this case it's fine with me because I always do uppercase boc. That's kind of how I want to name my files. So uppercase boc, does that exist in the file name, which is a string? And if it does, then we go into another if condition, line number 21. This is going to be if OS path exists This is going to be if we see the file name exists. So this is going to be checking to see if the file exists, we want to do something a little different because it is probably going to cause an error. So if os.path exists, giving it the entire file name, this would be the folder name and the file name and the extension, then we create a unique ID. Once we have this unique ID, we just put it at the beginning of the file name. So it would be unique ID plus an underscore plus the file name plus the file extension. That would be our new file name. And now our destination file variable is actually going to equal our new file name. So we do os path join our file directory joined with the new file name. This creates our new destination file variable. And at the very end, we do line 25. This is actually the code that moves the file from the original path with the file name to the destination path with the file name. But even though we have all this code, actually, it's not actually being ran until we go into line 27. Here we have an event handler. This is just a variable. We can name this whatever we want, and it is equal to our class. So once we have this event handler, we want to also create an observer. This is watchdog. And with these two, we're able to actually run our event. Line 29, this is again is part of Watchdog. It's just their documentation, what their functions are called. This is how to use it. We do our observer.schedule. We pass it our event handler. We give it the source directory. This is where to look for the events. And then we do recursive equals false. So recursive equals false just asks if we should be looking at the subdirectories and folders inside those folders, but we're not. We're just specifically focused on the source directory, which is the downloads folder, and we start the observer. Once we have those parameters in the schedule function, we go ahead and start the observer. This line 32 through line 37 is just a while loop. I want to stop the observer if I find any keyboard interrupts. I want to stop the observer basically if the program is starting to be interrupted by the user, specifically with the keyboard interrupts. So this is kind of like a way in order to stop the program, because this program is going to be running forever. And this line 33 and 34, make sure of that. This is a while loop that will continue to run. This is definitely an infinite loop. While equals true, and this just says go to the next loop. But that's it. We have an automatic file mover, all thanks to ChatGPT. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and drop a like. If you have any problems or questions with any of this code, please go ahead and mention it in the comments and I will reply to you. But thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I hope to see you at the next video.